2018. First up is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move the agenda, Chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. Next up is the approval of the minutes for February 26, 2018. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next up is our announcements from MTS Director Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Two updates tonight. On the TPP front, MTS staff is presenting the TPP to Minneapolis and St. Paul this week, and then next week to Anoka County and Hennepin County. This will conclude our round of presentations and soliciting inputs from policymakers. We will have met with all commissioners from each of the 7 counties and the 7W region, and council members from Minneapolis and St. Paul over the last few months. And then last week, the TPP really started its process of get to the council for approval for public release. Last week, TAC Planning, who has been providing extensive input for the past year, voted unanimously to recommend approval of the draft. It now goes to TAC and TAB before coming to this committee in a few months. Also last week, Governor Dayton announced the formation of Advisory Council on Connected and Autonomous Vehicles. The council will be comprised of state agencies and 13 at-large members. Chair Cherimoff will be a member on the Advisory Council. He has opened applications to be on the Advisory Council for the 13 at-large members, and their applicants are being accepted through the Secretary of State's office through April 27th. It is expected that this Advisory Council will meet beginning in June and provide recommendations by December on steps that the state should take and prepare for connected and autonomous vehicles in the future. With that, Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members? Councilmember Elkins.
It's probably a question for Aline, I guess, but any idea, would it be okay if any of us applied?
I don't know. That's a question for Aline.
Yeah.
I can certainly ask her.
I think I'll pose the question to Aline, yeah.
Sure.
I will ask and bring that back to the committee.
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Reynoso.
I believe there are certain specifications regarding who they represent.
Okay.
I personally plan on applying. I already have actually, due to my day job. So, but I think there's specific trades and experience or input that they're looking for.
Okay.
Any other questions? General Manager Lamb.
Yes, Madam Chair, members, it's beginning to feel like spring. If that isn't reason enough to celebrate, I've got a couple other good reasons coming up your way. One of them is Thursday is Driver Appreciation Day. So I'm going to pass out these cards. They're actually collectible, so if you wanted to have a couple different of your favorite operators, these will be on the fair box. But also more personally, I'm going to pass out these little thank you cards. So for your favorite operator or just one that you happen to run into on Thursday, if you want to maybe jot down a little personalized note, take one or more, and feel free to do that. There will be celebrations all day. We'll celebrate on the street as well as the respective service garages. We're encouraging customers to also share thank you cards, submit commendations, and simply say thank you as they board and exit. Train operators can be acknowledged with a wave or a thumbs up as they enter the station. Council members who are interested in meeting with operators or one of our garages are invited to do so, and if you are, let me know and we'll make sure that we get you set up. With that, I want to just cue up just a quick little short video about thank our operators.
They all have a good mood. They're all very calm, even though it's a stressful situation. I think I would be stressed out if I was driving a bus full of people in a snowstorm, and they've been really good. Any bus that I've taken, they've been very professional.
Vince makes every morning ride actually exciting. It's actually fun to be on the train when he's conducting, because he's always got something fun to say over the speaker, or he says hi to everyone. He knows a lot of passengers' names. He makes it actually feel like an event to take the train in the morning.
I'm really grateful for the service that the bus drivers provide, because they have a lot of people to carry around, a lot of safety and things like that on their hands every single day, and they don't always get the gratitude that's owed to them for it.
They have a heck of a job making sure that everyone on the train is safe, but also people who are crossing in front of them and cars who are driving where they're not supposed to. I think they do a great job with that.
One that stands out is Ray. He takes me home every evening, and this particular winter has been an ordeal for the passengers, and I just can't think of what it's been like for the bus drivers or operators. And Ray's always cheerful, he's professional, he's safe. I look forward to seeing him every evening.
Riding buses and seeing how drivers are providing all sorts of services beyond just getting the bus where it needs to go, but also providing people social interactions for the day, being tour guides, and sometimes the drivers who are really trying to provide bilingual services, and listening to people whose Spanish pronunciation was worse than mine, but the intent was there. I really respect what drivers do and how hard the job is, especially as someone who doesn't drive.
Yeah, all the drivers, thank you for being professional and friendly and being considerate of people's schedules, trying hard to get there on time.
Happy Driver Appreciation Day.
Thanks, Metro Transit drivers, for everything you do. I really appreciate it. You help me get around town.
I thank all the drivers for all the work that they do on a daily basis.
Happy Driver Appreciation Day, and thank you for driving safe.
And to all the Metro Transit drivers, although you might not hear it every day, thank you for everything that you do. We as riders truly appreciate your service and what you do for the city as a job.
Thank you all. We appreciate you.
Now, if that's getting your party on, let's continue to build on that. And Metro Transit will participate in the Minneapolis and St. Paul's St. Patrick's Day parades this weekend. Council members interested in marching in the St. Paul parade are invited to meet at our Haywood Garage at 11:15 a.m. Anyone interested in marching in the Minneapolis parade is invited to meet at Haywood Garage at 6:30 p.m. Each parade will last about 2 hours. As usual, free rides will be available on all routes from 6 p.m. Saturday until 3 a.m. Sunday. And this promotion is underwritten, of course, by Miller Coors to encourage people to celebrate safely. And finally, from a celebration standpoint, council members are reminded that the Metro Transit Police will be recognized for their extraordinary efforts at the department's annual awards ceremony next week. The awards will be held at the Midpoint Event Center in St. Paul at 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday, March 21st. And at that time, the department will also announce its Officer of the Year. So with spring also comes road construction. And as we get ready to make schedule adjustments this week, many of the changes on 30 bus routes will be involve really kind of adjusting the schedules to account for that road construction. But several express routes traveling between downtown St. Paul and eastern suburbs will follow a new route that will help expedite the afternoon rush hour trips. And the next round of service changes that begin June 9th included a brand new limited stop extension of Route 54 on East 7th Street, and of course the changes to 35W. And finally, I want to announce that the A-Line new digital displays that will provide real-time transit information are being installed on our A-Line buses this month. The signs will be used to communicate service alerts and predicted departure information for connecting routes. So customers can see how their connecting routes are timed appropriately, and allowing customers that opportunity to adjust their travel plans as they ride. And customer feedback will help us determine how else the signs could be used moving forward. And with that, Madam Chair, so ends the General Manager's report.
Thank you. Are there questions from committee members? Councilmember Latowski.
Thank you. Is that little video you shared on social media that we could share?
It is
that way?
on social media. Madam Chair,
Thank you.
Councilmember Latowski.
Any other questions? I don't know if you remember, but last year I participated in Transit Driver Appreciation Day, and I know many of you did too. And it was so much fun. And I had granola bars, and I had these thank you notes, and I ran out of the thank you notes really early in the day, and didn't run out of the granola bars. So I highly recommend it. And the other funny story is, I told Andrew I really wanted to participate again, and he's like, "Okay, I'll get you a TikTok." And I'm like, I have no idea what a TikTok is. And I guess it's like a daily agenda of where you're going to be when. So you can connect with Andrew or Zoe, and they'll get you a TikTok as well. So next up is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move the approval of the consent agenda.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is adopted. Next up on non-consent is 2018-58, the final Airlake Airport Long-Term Comprehensive Plan, and Ross Owen is here.
Move over to this side. We've got Mr. Neil Ralston, MAC Planner, who will be providing a presentation as well. So, good afternoon. I'm Russ Owen, Senior Planner with MTS. I'll be presenting on the final draft Airlake Airport Long-Term Comp Plan. I'll be providing the overview and findings of the document related to Thrive and TPP. And like I said, Mr. Neil Ralston, MAC Planner, will be presenting on the planning process and some of the technical aspects of the long-term comp plan. So just as a quick refresher, this is a regional aviation system that shows all the airports in the MAC, all the airports that the MAC owns, and 2 other airports that are based in that are in the region that are owned by local communities. This also shows the 2 private seaplane bases in the region. And just as a refresher, MAC owns Airlake, which is in Lakeville, Eureka Township in Lakeville. They own Lake Elmo, Forest Flying Cloud, Crystal, downtown St. Paul, Anoka Blaine, and Minneapolis St. Paul. And South St. Paul is owned by the community as well as Forest Lake. So under statutory authority, the council must review the Airlake Airport long-term comp plan for conformance to the system, the airport system, as well as consistency with council policy. The statute states that the Metropolitan Council shall review all long-term comprehensive plans for each independent commission, but only if such plan is determined by the council to have an area-wide effect or a multi-community effect. This airport is on the border of Eureka Township in Lakeville, so it does have a multi-community effect. Just another quick refresher, long-term comp plans. It's a 20-year planning document. They're periodically updated every 5 years. While updating the system plan, the transportation policy plan, in the transportation policy plan, these long-term comp plans provide input to the TPP. So Airlake Airport, Metropolitan classification of this airport is a minor airport. The FAA classification is a reliever, and the role is a regional airport. The aircraft anticipated to use the Airlake Airport will continue to be small single-engine piston airplanes used primarily for personal, recreational, and flight training purposes. And there may be some mid-sized corporate jets used primarily for business purposes. MnDOT classifies the airport as an intermediate, and Airlake Airport is a unique airport in the state, is in that it's the only intermediate airport classified in Minnesota that has an ILS, which is an instrument landing system. It's basically special equipment on the airport and in the aircraft that allow pilots to fly and land in bad weather. So this is this shows some of the based aircraft and operations at some of the airports in the region. The reason I'm showing you this is to just get a sense of scale. This is all according to Minnesota Aviation's. Some of this data was released in the Minnesota State Aviation System Plan, which was published about 4 years ago. Airlake Airport is one of 83 intermediate airports in the state. So this is a preferred alternative for the long-term comp plan, and Neil will discuss this more in detail. From the council's perspective, some of the advantages of the preferred alternative include the current airport minor classification does not expect to change with the improvements being made. The primary runway, 1230, is extended to 4,850 feet, which is consistent with FAA guidelines. It does not impact the ILS system. There will be no relocation of Cedar Avenue, Highview Avenue, or the railroad track. And there's going to be a possible apron expansion and developing the south building area for growth. Some of the disadvantages of the preferred alternative include that the runway extensions move the departing aircraft closer to the ground, or I'm sorry, closer to the airport boundary, which could increase ground noise for those closest to the ground, outside the airport boundary. MAC will need to educate some of the pilots about some of the new runway takeoffs and procedures and the landing distances. There'll be a little bit of complexity for the pilots. And it increases operational impacts during construction. And also it increases existing pavement maintenance, the maintenance burden that will be added by the taxiway extensions. So the findings, one of Thrive's outcomes is prosperity. Advancing this outcome is to plan and invest in infrastructure, amenities, and a quality of life needed for economic competitiveness. A thriving regional aviation system is an economic asset to the region, providing businesses and people access to the global economy. The system of reliever airports provide alternatives for general aviation that are dispersed across the region. The council reviews major capital improvement projects at the MAC and supports investment in airport facilities to keep pace with market needs and maintain the region's economic vitality. To enhance prosperity in the region, the council states that it will maintain, improve, and preserve our system of reliever airports. In regards to the transportation policy plan, this plan and the preferred development alternative for the Airlake Airport retains its system as a minor general aviation facility, which conforms to this system and is consistent with council policy. The TPP also has a policy of airport sponsors providing sanitary sewer to system airports, which Airlake is one, when such service is available. And for this plan begins the process of providing those services. And, excuse me. And finally, the council will need to make a formal determination of conformance with the aviation system and consistency with council policies. And with that, I can turn it over to Neil to discuss a little bit more about the plan.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Russ said, I'm Neil Ralston, Airport Planner for the Metropolitan Airports Commission. I'm going to give you a briefing this afternoon to provide a real quick summary of the final draft 2035 long-term comprehensive plan that we've prepared for Airlake Airport. I'll start off with a brief recap of Airlake Airport's role in our system and the key planning issues that we are seeking to address. Then I'll give a quick review of the planning journey that we've been on for the past 18 months or so, and provide a review of the preferred development alternative that's been selected. Finally, I'll close with a summary of our stakeholder engagement process and then the next steps for our plan. So as Russ mentioned, the current role of Airlake is to accommodate personal, recreational, and business aviation users primarily in the South Metro. The proposed plan does not recommend changing the airport's role to regularly accommodate larger aircraft types, any sort of scheduled passenger service, or scheduled cargo activity. However, with some improvements, we do think that Airlake can be equipped to better fulfill its current role, particularly when it comes to accommodating business-related flying. From an airport infrastructure perspective, we've identified several objectives for our plan. First is to better accommodate business aircraft needs by maximizing the airfield's operational capabilities within the current property footprint. Second is to maintain or improve upon existing runway protection zone land compatibility. The runway protection zone, or RPZ, is a trapezoid surface beyond the end of a runway that the Federal Aviation Administration stipulates should be kept clear of incompatible land uses. Third is to mitigate existing issues with airspace penetrations to the extent practical. And fourth is to update our taxiway layout to reflect current industry best practices. So the preferred alternative in the final draft plan does propose to provide a longer runway length, but in a manner that does not require moving Cedar Avenue on the east side of the airport or the railroad track on the west side. On this graphic, Cedar Avenue is here, and the progressive rail line is. First, we would extend both ends of the runway to provide a longer runway length in a manner. We would extend both ends of the runway for a published total length of 4,850 feet, and that's about 750 feet longer than the current runway length. In this configuration, not all the published pavement length would be available for landing and takeoff in each direction, but it would all be available for an aircraft to stop in the event of an aborted takeoff. Next, the existing runway 12 landing location, that's the northwest side of the airport, would be shifted to the southeast by about 120 feet, and that is to provide a clear approach surface over the railroad track that is adjacent to the airport. Now we can make these changes, like I said, without having to move Cedar Avenue or the railroad track. However, due to several factors, we would have to relocate a section of existing 225th Street. That's the low-volume township road along the south side of the airport, and that road would be relocated to a new intersection with Cedar Avenue. We're also proposing a minor taxiway configuration change to eliminate direct access to the runway from the aircraft parking apron. And in the same area, the plan identifies an area to expand the parking apron to better accommodate aircraft during peak activity periods. And finally, the plan does carry forward previous recommendations to develop the south building area for additional hangar development. We believe that there is demand for new build hangars at Airlake Airport, provided that they can be connected to municipal sewer and water services. To achieve this goal, MAC decided last year to pursue annexation of the south building area into the city of Lakeville. And we received word just late last week that the annexation ordinance was approved on March 9th. And that is for the area that's shown in yellow here with the additional hangar development. Our 45-day public comment period for the draft plan started in mid-July 2017 and ended in late August. We held 2 public informational meetings, one in Lakeville and the other in Eureka Township. We had about 60 interested citizens attend those meetings. Over the same period, we received a total of 10 written comments. Of these, 4 were from airport tenants and users, 4 were from members of the public, and 2 were from municipal representatives. Waypoint Flight Services, which is the full service fixed base operator business at the airport, submitted comments in support of the proposed plan. City of Lakeville sent a letter stating that they did not have objections or concerns, and Dakota County submitted a few technical comments for consideration. As shown on this slide, no specific topic generated more than a handful of comments. The topic of concern that was mentioned most frequently by commenters, and that was 3 times, was relocating 225th Street around the extended runway end to a new intersection at Cedar Avenue. We do acknowledge it seems a bit odd that our plan calls to relocate a low-volume gravel township road while the much busier Cedar Avenue can remain in place. However, it is shown that way in order to comply very specifically with current FAA technical design standards and policies. For a vehicle operator who is using 225th Street to cross Cedar Avenue, we calculate the relocated section of road would result in an increased travel time of 15 to 30 seconds. And also, we do propose to pave those sections of relocated roadway to enhance safety and increase smoothness for vehicle operators. The remaining public comments pertain to noise and land use impacts, annexation, aircraft traffic counts, and opportunities for enhanced community partnerships. For From the outset of our planning process, we prepared for a multi-phase stakeholder engagement program. As shown on the slide, we presented information about the plan to a wide range of partner agencies, municipal representatives, airport tenants, and the general public. Our next step is to obtain the full council's determination that the final draft long-term comprehensive plan is indeed consistent with the Thrive 2040 Transportation Policy Plan and the Regional Aviation System Plan. After the full council has rendered its determination, the plan will go back to the MAC board for final adoption, and then the plan will eventually proceed into an environmental review phase. In summary, we believe that the plan for Airlake represents a reasonable, practical, and cost-effective way to address our state of planning goals in a manner that does not require moving major highway or railroad structure. And with that, I can stand for any questions that council members may have.
Councilmember Dorfman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just one question, since longer runways are a little bit safer, pilots like it better, why isn't it being extended another 150 feet to the 5,000 feet that's allowed under state statute?
Madam Chair, council member, we're trying to maximize what we can do on the facility without either moving Cedar, relocating Cedar Avenue, or moving the railroad. And
it's too tight to do that.
Our previous plan showed a 5,000-foot runway, but required moving Cedar Avenue, which is a pretty major endeavor, particularly some of the development that's happened since. Yeah. And this is what we can do with what we already have. Property.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is 2018-68 coach bus purchase. I'll get it out. Paul Colton is here to present.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. I'm Paul Colton, Fleet Manager with MTS, and we've got a bus purchase to present to you this afternoon. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to enter into a contract with Prevost to purchase 5 coach replacement buses in an amount not to exceed $2,760,000. The council has the opportunity to purchase these 5 coaches utilizing the state of New Hampshire's competitively bid contract. And this gives us the opportunity to save approximately $50,000 per bus when compared to our most recent purchases. The 5 buses will be replacement buses and operated and used by Southwest Transit in their service. These buses will be funded with regional transit capital, so there is no federal monies involved in this particular purchase. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Are there questions from committee members?
Pretty straightforward. I move adoption, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is 2018-35 authorization to amend 2018 unified budget. Heather and Ed are here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members, Ed Petrie, Metro Transit.
And Heather Augustin-Hebner, MTS.
We're here to present this evening a very short carry forward amendment. It's going to impact both the capital and operating amendments. I will go through the Metro Transit portion first and then answer questions, and Heather will move on to the MTS portion. First of all, on the Metro Transit portion, it's just 2 items that we're recommending for adjustment this evening. The first item is for the Blue Line extension. It's recognizing $11,087,084 in Hennepin County funding, which has been assigned to Hennepin County from the 2017 CTIP grant. This was approved by Council Business Item 2017-277. So it's as a result of the dissolution of CTIP and the reallocation of monies within Hennepin County. And the other item is something that we're very happy to bring forward. We were awarded a low-no grant with the federal government to purchase electric buses and the associated charging equipment for the C line. We are awarded, it's a discretionary grant, we are awarded $1,750,000 in federal funds, and we'll use $1,225,000 in invest as the local match. And with that, Chair, committee members, I would stand for any questions on the Metro Transit portion.
Are there questions?
Move the amendment.
Oh, we have
Oh.
MTS next.
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, Heather.
Madam Chair, committee members, will move on to MTS. So MTS is requesting to bring in just over $266,000 into our authorized capital programs. New funds will be used to make electrical and signage improvements on the Cedar Grove Inline Station, maintain the current fleet through midlife rehabilitations, and to purchase gate tag technology needed for the new Mall of America station security system. And MTS is also requesting on the operating side to transfer $20,000 of federal funds from the capital program to the operating budget and an equal amount of operating funds to the capital program. We do this from time to time, and as a reminder, this allows us to match expenses to eligible funding sources. This action has no impact on regional MVEST allocations, MVEST reserves, or planned capital projects. This amendment supports stewardship through responsible planning and management of resources, and prosperity by investing in the Blue Line extension, which will promote economic competitiveness. We ask that you approve the capital and operating adjustments as indicated in attachments 1 and 2, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from committee members?
I'd like to move the motion, ma'am.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, 2018-67, execution of contract options for sea line shelters and pylons. John Welding and Katie Roth.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Rodriguez, members of the committee. I'm Katie Roth, manager of arterial BRT at Metro Transit. Before I hand things over to Sean to go through the item, I did want to add on one late-breaking, details being finalized item to Brian's list of celebrations and construction coming up this year. On Tuesday, March 20th, the council, along with Hennepin County and the city of Minneapolis, are going to be hosting a groundbreaking for the Sea Line. This will take place at the northeast corner of Penn and Lowry in North Minneapolis at 10:45 in the morning. And we welcome you all to join us there. And we'll be starting remarks at 10:45, followed by some turning of dirt. And construction will get underway as soon as the snow falls or snow clears and we're able to actually turn some dirt on the corridor. So with that, I'll hand things over to Sean.
Great, thank you, Katie. Madam Chair, committee members, I'm Sean Combs-Walding, project engineer for the Sea Line BRT. Today's proposed action, we propose that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to exercise contract options on contract 14P084 with Dual Guard Industries to purchase 22 shelters and 19 pylons for the Sea Line in an amount not to exceed $990,000. On a background on that, the council awarded that contract 14P084 to Dual Guard in December 2014. This was to design and purchase the A-line pylons. Within that contract, it includes options of up to 210 additional shelters and 210 additional pylons for the future of the BRT network in the Twin Cities. And just again, this would exercise options for 22 shelters and 19 pylons. This would complete the equipment needs for our Sea Line and for the Sea Line major contractor to be able to install those as part of our Sea Line operations for launch in 2019. And this requested authorization also includes a spare parts allocation for these purchases. The funding is authorized and available in Project 61404, which is the Sea Line project for this purchase, and there's no known opposition to this purchase. With that, we take any questions.
Are there questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
while we're on the subject of
Councilmember.
less rapid line projects, I would appreciate, maybe everybody's up to this better than I am, but I would like to see one map that lists all these lines and the projected routes and the projected line lengths. It would be really helpful. It would be really helpful. And it might be in here somewhere, but that's not where I usually access my information. I get most of it here at the committee level. And so that's my request. And if you only have to make one copy, I wish you would do it just for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think that's a good suggestion. And actually, we do have an update scheduled on our work plan, but I would appreciate a one-pager as well. So I think that's a good suggestion. The next 4 items are related to Southwest LRT agreements, and Jim is here to make a presentation, and Dave. And after your presentation, I have a statement from Councilmember Munt that I wanted to read, and then we can get into questions. So go ahead, Jim.
All right, Madam Chair, thank you. I'm Jim Alexander, Project Director for the Southwest LRT project, and I have Dave Tyson here from OGC. The first 2 business items of the 4 we're going to talk about tonight kind of commingle with each other, so Dave and I kind of play a co-part on this since they are interrelated. So what we're going to talk about today is a joint and cooperative exercise of powers agreement. That's Dave's piece, and the second is a real estate purchase agreement, and tied with that is a property transfer agreement, and filing with the STB, the Surface Transportation Board, and also talking about a potential settlement with TC&W, and we'll get into the details on that. So the existing configuration, you're all probably familiar with this this map here. This is the alignment for the freight rail. You can see in green the Southwest LRT project alignment as it winds in through there. Starting at the bottom left, there is what's called the Glencoe Junction. That is trackage that's owned by TC&W, Twin Cities and Western, and they are the sole operator and the common carrier. The common carrier, I'll be talking about that tonight, is the entity that is responsible through the Surface Transportation Board to provide a service to any shipper that's along that line. So we'll be talking about that, particularly as we get into this red section called the Bass Lake Spur. So the next line there is the red. The Bass Lake Spur is currently owned by Canadian Pacific, and Canadian Pacific is the common carrier, and the rail operator out there is TC&W. And then finally, the Kenilworth Corridor, as it winds through the lakes there in Minneapolis, and kind of the goldish there, that's property owner by HCRRA, Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority, and HCRRA does have the common carrier role in that corridor, and the rail operator is both TC&W and CP. They both have overhead rights, and overhead rights is essentially rights to allow a railroad to run through the through the area and not necessarily serve any shippers. So for those that are not graphically inclined, just kind of a layout of the current situation with the Bass Lake Spur and the Kenilworth Corridor, essentially what I showed on the map there. So just to give you a little background, we've been before you often on this issue. It's been kind of a high topic as we've been working on Southwest LRT. Going back to November 9, 2016, we sought authorization to negotiate an operations and maintenance agreement with Twin Cities and Western. And coupled with that would be a filing with the Surface Transportation Board to essentially acquire the rights of way and physical rail assets of the Bass Lake Spur and the Kenilworth Corridor, and to transfer the freight rail common carry obligation to TC&W. Another item I don't have shown here, but we were before the council in early 2017 to seek approval to purchase the Bass Lake Spur for an amount of $27.45 million. And you may recall that at the time that I presented that, we were looking for concurrence from FTA, and we since have concurrence with FTA. We're presenting this again tonight because it's before it was coupled with this the idea of the operations and maintenance facility, the operations and maintenance agreement going to TC&W, and so in this case we have come up with an alternative route alternative plan, I should say, that we'll talk about in subsequent slides. So further background, later in July 2017, last year, we sought approval, and we did get the authorization for the regional administrator to execute that OMA with TC&W related to operation of the Bass Lake Spur and the Kenilworth Corridor. And then in August, we essentially finalized the details of the business details with that through a construction agreement. in the amount not to exceed $16.1 million. So a little background since then, there were some a series of correspondence and discussions after that August 16 event, and I just tell you that the conditions that we had understood and we had agreed to that were brought forward on that August 16th business item essentially kind of grew in scope, and we really made some attempts to try to get back to where we were on the 16th, but just were unable to finalize an agreement with TC&W, and so we had to look for an alternative path on this, and so really kind of putting our heads together with Canadian Pacific and HCRRA, and trying to figure out how can we make this work, and so the idea is to essentially let me back up again. So the idea is to acquire the Kenilworth corridor and the Bass Lake Spur, and subject to rail easements and existing trackage rights within those corridors. So there's a trackage rights agreement with the Bass Lake Spur that involves CP and TC&W today, and there's a trackage rights agreement that involves HCRRA and TC&W and CP and the Kenilworth corridor today. And so what we're looking to do is continue those trackage rights and allowing TC&W to continue to operate as they do today. TRA essentially stays the same. I think I'll hand it over to Dave to talk about the JPA.
Thank you, Jim. Council members, Madam Chair. The purpose of a JPA is a special agreement under state law that allows one government to provide a service or perform a function on behalf of another government. And we need this joint powers agreement in this case because the Metropolitan Council does not have the statutory authority to be a freight rail operator. Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority has that authority. So Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority stepped up and we came up with a joint powers agreement. And it has two general purposes. One is to provide or be available to provide common carrier service in the Bass Lake corridor and the Kenilworth corridor if that ever happens. We don't think that's a very likely prospect. And the other is to be a party to the two existing trackage rights agreements that Jim mentioned. HCRRA has stepped up to do that. We've come to, we've drafted an agreement to make that happen. And the primary elements of the joint powers agreement are that HCRRA will stay in the corridors. It ultimately will be responsible as a common carrier in the two corridors. And it will provide, or it will be responsible for providing any service to shippers that come up in those two corridors, which we think is a very remote possibility at this point. In exchange for that, and also will be a party to the TRAs, in exchange for that, the council is agreeing basically to hold HCRRA harmless. That we will assume responsibility financially for the maintenance of the freight rail tracks in the corridors, and we will ensure HCRRA both during construction and post-construction into revenue service. And that's basic, and that would be consistent with the legislation that was passed in 2017 on railroads and shared corridors. So we need this joint powers agreement for at least 4 reasons. First of all, we needed to make our filing with the Surface Transportation Board. We need it in order to acquire both of the corridors for the project. We needed to demonstrate to the FTA that the council will have continuing control over the property, which is a necessary condition for FTA funding. And we needed to begin construction on the project. And I think that's basically the brief summary of the joint powers agreement. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll move on to the other piece here is the real estate purchase agreement, property transfer agreement, and petition with STB. So the first piece I spoke of, again, back in early 17, we did seek approval from the council to purchase the Bass Lake Spur for $27.45 million, and that number still stands. So we're looking to do that here again under this new plan here that we have before you. The second piece is the property transfer agreement with the county. They own the corridor through the Kenilworth corridor, and it actually extends all the way out to Shady Oak. And the third piece is to make a petition or a filing called a State of Maine filing with the Surface Transportation Board. And that's required to allow the council to acquire the rights of way, but it's also to allow that common carrier role to exchange from CP to Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority in the Bass Lake Spur. And as we spoke of, HCRRA already has that authority in the Kenilworth corridor, so that would stay. That would stay as it is today. So just a little bit about the Surface Transportation Board. There are presently 2 members of a 5-board entity, federal entity, and they're really responsible for reviewing certain railroad property transfers such as this. And we anticipate that this filing would be, assuming we get approval from the council, and I also add that the county is also weighing in on this subject as well. Assuming we get those approvals, we would look to file shortly after those actions, and we expect 30 to 60 day process for this to occur to get that approval from the STB. So as this would look with the approval of council and the county and that STB action, as we look again at the left, lower left, that Glencoe Junction would stay the same. It would be still TC&W's property owner and common carrier rail operator. Now, as we look at the Bass Lake Spur, the council would become the property owner, so we would essentially own the land and the track. And that's a 6.8 mile stretch of track that we would acquire. And just kind of get up to speed, why are we buying 6.8 miles of track is we're essentially impacting about 3.8 miles of that. And as we've approached CP on this, they have said that we're willing to sell, but we're only willing to sell the whole thing. It's kind of all or nothing. And so thus we need to purchase the whole 6.8. And again, FTA has concurred with that, with the approach that we have put for them. So in this case, the Bass Lake Spur, again, the council being the property owner, the common carrier would go to HCRRA, it is currently CP, and that rail operator would stay TC&W. Again, that TRA, the trackage right agreement in that corridor would stay the same, so no change to that. Then as we progress into the Kenilworth corridor, the property owner would go from the county to the Met Council, and then the common carrier would remain the county, and the rail operator would also remain TC&W and CP. And had some questions, why is CP still there? CP still has an interest. They don't intend to operate in there, but they would say that would be a business dealing for them to get out of the corridor, so they want to keep those rights, even though it's kind of a dead end for them. And then coupled through here, we've talked in the past quite a bit about the connection to the M&S, that kind of north-south line that is owned by Canadian Pacific. That is put in there, proposed by the project, and it's going to be replacing a switching Y that's in there today that connects the 2 lines, and that would be owned by Met Council as well, with HCRRA being the common carrier and TC&W being the rail operator. And here is just in table format here, and kind of wanted to show the relationship of the agreements. It's kind of an effective slide to show how the JPA would relate. And as you see, that ties the Met Council with HCRRA. And then if we couple that with the TRAs that are out there already, that essentially ties HCRRA with TC&W. So as we look at the full picture, we have the JPA to develop that relationship with the council and HCRRA acting as that common carrier, and then the existing trackage right agreements linking the county with TC&W, the rail operator. So I just kind of wanted to touch base on this slide a little bit. Maybe a little concerned about what's happening with TC&W. And I would just say that, we spent a lot of time with TC&W and their consultant looking over the plans and trying to figure out what the specs are going to be. And we've essentially kept that pretty much where it was when we talked to them several years ago now, to where we are now with their specifications. And it includes new rail ballast ties. It includes new signals. There's new gates. We have new bridge structures. We have a more efficient connection to the M&S connection that I just spoke of. And I think most importantly, the construction specifications are pretty much left intact from what we had negotiated with TC&W, and particularly the phasing and work windows. We had 11 work stoppages, if you will, to allow construction to occur, and we essentially still have those 11 in place today in our specifications. So also wanted to talk a little bit about the Bass Lake Spur siding. There's quite a bit of track out there today that's siding track. It isn't used for mainline track. It's essentially used to switch out cars as needed by the railroad. And approximately 16,000 feet of 16,000 feet of track is going to be removed because of the project. You can see that in yellow and in red, and you can see the phases which those will come out. The little piece in red around Excelsior, about 2,500 feet or so, will come out shortly after we give a limited notice to proceed to the civil construction contractor, which is currently anticipated toward the end of August, early September of this year. And that yellowish area is the remainder of that 16,000 that would come out in the probably the late summer, August timeframe of 2019. The blue segment, there's about 8,500 feet of siding track that would remain as part of as the project gets built for Southwest LRT. So I just want to, something else I need to acknowledge, we spent a lot of time with TC&W trying to come to an agreement. As I indicated, it really culminated with that August 16th board action that you all awarded along with the rest of the council. And we felt like we had the terms set. Well, it just didn't turn out that way, and TC&W was looking for a little bit more. And so we're acknowledging that there was a lot of work put in that, and there's a little, the siding that they use today, some of it's going to be coming out. We're acknowledging that. So we have submitted an offer to TC&W to essentially settle things, and essentially the idea is to settle all potential claims. Of course, we don't have any claims today, but that would settle any claims that TC&W might have, but also looks to seek cooperation from TC&W during the STB process, that filing we have, and also during construction. What this would entail is we would proposing to pay TC&W up to $11.9 million, and that's encompassed within that $16.1 million that we presented back in August of 2017. And then there's also a payment to TC&W for $230,000 that they have indicated they have expended since we last had that visit with them in early September of 2017. But it also requires that the council's construction contractor, maybe I better get here. I'm having a hard time seeing that with my eyes here. Hang on. Also add TC&W as an additional insured on its commercial general liability policy. That's something we had planned to do already, and so we're prepared to do that. Assuming we get to do an agreement. Also name TC&W as an insured on the council's railroad protective liability policy during construction. And I think most importantly, name TC&W as an additional insured on the council's railroad liability insurance policy during revenue service. I don't know if you recall, but last year, special session, there was a special law that was passed to allow the council to provide that type of insurance for an LRT related incident that might involve freight rail. And so those are items that are on the offering plate, if you will, to TC&W. And under this proposal, we would look for TC&W to cooperate again during the STB filing, but also during construction, and release any potential claims, and then also vacate that existing siding track, those tracks I mentioned up to 16,000 feet or so. The proposal settlement that we've provided TC&W, we did this last week, late last week, is April 18th, 2018. So for recommendations, I think, Dave, you're up.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the recommendation on the joint powers agreement is that you authorize your regional administrator to negotiate and execute a joint and cooperative exercise of powers agreement with Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority related to common carrier obligations in the Kenilworth and Bass Lake Spur corridors and the performance of duties and responsibilities under the existing trackage rights agreements. The second part, since the JPA is at this point envisioned to be a long-term agreement, we anticipate that over time there will be some agreements and memoranda that may have to be executed. So the second part of the recommendation is that you authorize your regional administrator to negotiate and execute ancillary agreements necessary to implement the joint powers agreement.
So, Madam Chair, I don't know if you want to consider both of these together, or do you want to weigh in on that first, or?
We had talked earlier, and we talked about just having the whole presentation and then taking questions, but if council members have other, want to vote on the first two now, we can do that as well. Why don't you make the whole presentation, and then we can discuss it.
Thank you. So moving on to 28-60. This is that the council authorized the regional administrator to first negotiate and execute a real estate purchase agreement between the council and CP related to the acquisition of the Bass Lake Spur for an amount not to exceed $27.45 million. Secondly, negotiate and execute a property transfer agreement between the council and HCRRA related to transfer of ownership to the Kenilworth corridor as a permanent in-kind property transfer for SWLRT project. Thirdly, negotiate and execute ancillary documents necessary for closing on the Kenilworth and Bass Lake Spur corridors. Then next, petition the STB to acquire rights-of-way and physical rail assets of the Kenilworth and Bass Lake Spur corridors subject to the freight rail easements and existing TRAs. And finally, whoops, let me do that. Negotiate, looks like I have a typo there. It should just be negotiate any settlement or other agreement with TC&W related to the acquisition of these properties or utilization for construction of the Southwest LRT project. So that encompasses the first two business items, Madam Chair.
We can pause there. Are there any questions? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to understand how some of this works. So the TRAs remain the same, but the common carrier changes on the Bass Lake Spur from CP to HCRRA. So is that something, is there a new agreement that the TRA between them needs to be redone even then, or is it transferred, or what's the mechanism of that happening?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Barber, the process of going through the STB would make that effective assuming the STB does agree with that. It's called a state of Maine process of filing a petition. What we're looking to do is essentially keep the TRAs as they are, but that, as you say, you're correct, that that common carrier role would be transferred from CP to HCRRA. So there's documentation that would be submitted to STB to support that filing.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead, Jim.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll lead on to the next two items, one related to CTIB and one related to HCRRA in terms of funding. CTIB, as you heard earlier, you're well aware CTIB is dissolved, but there are still agreements out there that we need to have in place for our funding. And the first one involves the 2017 CTIB Capital Grant Agreement, a third amendment to that agreement. And this amendment provides funding to allow the council to continue engineering phase activities. And what I mean by engineering phase activities, essentially under FTA speak, we're still in the engineering phase of the project. So the recommendation tonight for 28-65 is that the council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute an amendment to extend the grant activity period from March 31 to May 31 of 2018. Secondly, increase the amount of matching funds provided by Hennepin County from 2.7 million to $46,740,465, and to clarify roles and responsibilities regarding liability and insurance in the corridor and financing federal grant reimbursements and costs associated with the unlikely event of a project shutdown prior to revenue service. And what this really means is that it just really clarifies that the county through the CTIB would pick up any costs, project costs, if there was an unlikely event that the project were to be shut down.
Councilmember Elkins.
Who do we negotiate with?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Elkins, very good question. It would be the county. So It's just the name of CTIB lives on in our agreements, essentially Hennepin County. All right. So on to HCRRA. This is a cooperative funding agreement. This would be a second amendment. And again, this amendment provides funding to allow the council to continue engineering phase activities. And the recommendation under 2018-61 is that the council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute an amendment to first extend the cooperative funding agreement grant period from March 31 to May 31 of 2018 and increase the amount of matching funds provided by HCRRA by an amount of just under $4 million to an amount of $63,869,282. And to clarify roles and responsibilities regarding liability and insurance in the corridor and financing federal grant reimbursements and costs associated with the unlikely event of a project shutdown prior to revenue service. Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to read a statement. Councilmember Munt could not be here tonight, and this is her statement. I regret that I can't be with you this afternoon. I broke my ankle and had surgery this morning to repair it. I strongly encourage all of you to approve the Southwest LRT freight agreements on today's agenda. Under these agreements, the council will become the owner of the Bass Lake Spur and the Kenilworth Corridor, and HCRRA will become the common carrier for both corridors. It keeps the Kenilworth Corridor in public ownership, an issue important to Minneapolis leaders and residents. It also provides continuity and reliability for existing rail operators, an issue important to a healthy economy. Most importantly, a vote in favor will move Southwest LRT closer to construction by providing the right-of-way needed to begin civil construction later this year. Without fierce perseverance, no light rail would exist. Our region has been planning for Southwest LRT for more than a decade. Every time we're confronted by a challenge, we find a solution. It's proof that Southwest LRT will succeed. Now is the time to move forward, break ground this year, and deliver another rail line on time and on budget with ridership that surpasses all expectations. That's how we roll. Very Jennifer like. Councilmember Dorfman.
Madam Chair, question, do you want to take these individually, these four, or all at once?
Take them individually, but we can discuss the presentation now and then have further questions as we go through the items. Councilmember Dorfman.
Well, then if we're going to have discussion first. So I remember when we, the council approved both the maintenance and operations agreement with TC&W and the construction agreement, moving that forward, being very pleased. And now we come to more than 6 months later. And so I have to say it's disappointing that we weren't able to see that through with Twin City and Western. But I'm really pleased that we've been able to work with CP and with Hennepin County through the Regional Rail Authority to come up with this solution today, which I think makes sense in terms of putting us in ownership and putting the Regional Rail Authority as a common carrier, and really not in any way impeding Twin City and Western's ability to do their job. And it doesn't change their operations. It, we're, as you said, we're still upgrading the tracks as they wanted and doing the construction protocols and the settlement moving forward. And so it seems like it's a pretty clean way of figuring out how to move this forward. And so I want to thank staff for working this out, and it'd be nice to get past this and continue to move the light rail forward. As Jennifer said, that's so important for the future of our region. So thank you.
Are there further comments or questions? No? I just want to echo my colleagues' statements. I think I agree with you. It's a clean approach. It keeps the LRT line, Southwest LRT line, on schedule. I continue to believe that's a vital project in our transit system. It allows TC&W to have all the rights that they had under the trackage rights agreement, which is good for our region. Moving, it'll be a way to move both people and goods within our region and through our region. So really pleased to get to this point tonight. I wanted to say thank you to our staff who worked really hard to get to these agreements, and also Hennepin County and their staff as well. So,
Madam Chair,
Councilmember
we
Dorfman.
should probably, even though she's not here, we should thank Aileen too, who spent a lot of time talking to everybody, trying to work through this as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, thank you to our chair. So we'll have 2018-59 Southwest Light Rail Transit Joint Cooperative Exercise of Powers Agreement with Hennepin County Railroad Authority. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, 2018-60 Southwest Light Rail Transit Freight Rail Agreements, Surface Transportation Board filings, and any settlement or other agreement with TC&W Railroad. And is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, 2018-65 Third Amendment to the CTIB Capital Grant Agreement, Southwest LRT. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Finally, 2018-61 Second Amendment to the Cooperative Funding Agreement with HCRRRA for the Southwest LRT.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice haircut too.
Thank you.
All right. Last on our non-consent agenda is 2018-57 2018 Transportation Committee Work Plan. Brian and Nick.
Yes, Madam Chair. Last meeting, we had an information sharing, and there were a couple items that the council or committee wanted to make sure that we added to the work plan. They included a more in-depth discussion on the fare increase in policy. And first of all, you'll have an update on that as part of the first information item, but that's been added. The second was, of course, a discussion about the transportation network companies, in terms of their role and what we're seeing in other parts of the country. The third is autonomous vehicles, and the fourth is, as was pointed out earlier about taking a step back and looking at the rapid bus a program all on one map and being able to kind of forecast what lines we're planning on, and those have all been added to the work plan in addition to the things that I think that you had a chance to review. I'll turn it over to Nick if there's any other summary comments, but we hopefully, as we move forward, Madam Chair, there may be times where we might elect that it makes more sense for the committee of the whole to get a full presentation. Maybe the rapid bus network might be a good example of that. And so we will try to get one way or the other all of these items attended to during the annual work plan.
Madam Chair, I would just add one item in addition to what Brian said, is that since the governor announced this advisory council, since the last meeting, we've added that. We provide updates under our autonomous vehicle area as needed.
Very good. Councilmember Reynoso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say this, and I've actually been asked 2 or 3 times within the last couple of weeks about the Met Council's potentially moving to autonomous buses. At this point, we have none in any foreseeable future to replace our drivers with autonomous buses. And I just want to make that clear, because I can tell you some of our drivers, we have an award ceremony in a few days. We're not looking to replace them. They are an incredible asset to this organization, and by no means are we looking anywhere near in the near foreseeable future of replacing them.
Thank you, Councilmember. Also, I can tie our previous business items to the discussion on TNCs, and I've had questions of why are we building LRT lines when there's these TNCs out there. And actually, the research that's out there so far is seeing that where the TNCs are, they're seeing increases in LRT ridership, that frequent fixed guideway service. So, but thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from council members? Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to draw through the thread that I raised at our last meeting about an interest in the arterial transitway corridor study and how that is translating to a plan for deploying arterial BRT lines in the region. And Brian, I just wanted to kind of draw that through in the sense that I don't know that I'm looking. I think an update would be helpful, but I want to go beyond update and have conversation about how the corridors that were prioritized in pretty explicit order in the transitway study, how those are now being configured for deployment, in service. We've obviously not just gone down the line as those were weighted and ranked in order, and there's good reasons that we've not done that, but I think those are policy decisions that really belong at this table. So that's my interest in really getting into that dialogue to figure out what is the E line going to look like, what is the F line going to look like, what is the G line going to look like, where are those going to be? Those are policy choices, not something else. So I want to just make that point.
Thank you, and I agree. I'd like to see an expanded discussion of the ABRT plans as well.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Commerce, I think one of the things that's going to challenge us all, of course, is the funding certainty or the lack thereof associated with these. And because part of the opportunity that we've been able to almost by some luck to take advantage of is we've been able to coordinate the civil construction projects in a corridor with other jurisdictions. And the more with certainty that we can look out 3, 4, 5, 10 years and say that's when we're going to do that particular corridor, the more robust the planning and construction can be for the other associated jurisdictions, whether they be the state, whether they be the counties, or whether they be the cities. And so I think it's in everyone's best interest not only to have that policy discussion of how that balanced approach and the network builds out, but also to recognize that there's going to be some flow, even with budget certainty, in terms of trying to sync up so that we can make the most cost-effective investment as we touch any particular corridor.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions or suggestions or comments on the work plan? I think I need a motion then.
Madam Chair, I'll move that just with the note that you're going to have to keep us on track to get to all these topics. It's a very robust work plan.
Second.
Don't be shy.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other comments, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we need to decide what is going to consent on the council. The coach, 1, 2, 3 can't. 4. And
9 doesn't need to go.
Right.
And 9, yeah.
And then so 5 through 8 on non-consent.
And 3.
And 3. Yes, thank you. Next up is we have 2 information items. First up is 2018 Commuter Choice Awards. Kelly Morrell.
Room empties.
Did I say that right? Sorry.
Actually, and that's really rare. We're gonna have immortals. Doesn't really jive. There we go. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Like I said, I'm Kelly Morrell from Metro Transit Commuter Programs, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about the Commuter Choice Awards. You went through the work plan, now you get to hear about the fun stuff. First, I would just want to give you a little bit of background on commuter programs and our work, which is, as you know, is funded through the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant, and that is specifically for outreach, public education and outreach. And we do that work with our 4 transportation management organization partners who provide that locally responsive education and outreach. And really, our goal is to raise awareness in the community about transportation options and help folks feel comfortable using those options as they come to their community. So we have this great event once a year called the Commuter Choice Awards, and really it's a recognition that our efforts in public education and outreach can't be successful without the amazing network of employers, community members, organizations, and property owners that implement the programs and projects that make travel behavior change possible. So we've been doing this for 27 years in one way or another. So it's been a very long-running program that's, I think, really respected in the TDM community in the Twin Cities. So the programs and projects that we're honoring at the Commuter Choice Awards are those that are focused on active transportation, bicycling, walking, carpooling, van pooling, of course, public transportation, and then teleworking and flexible scheduling. And all of our projects and programs that we're promoting or that are nominated are located within the 7-county metro area. And we're really focusing on those that were implemented during the previous calendar year. Our awards have 6 categories. They're building owner and management company, employer, government entity, commuter champion, and that's really individuals that are doing advocacy work outside of their paid work. Organizations, that's typically nonprofits, and then also commuter benefits coordinators. And I just want to take a second to talk about commuter benefits coordinators, which sounds super boring, but is really important because especially when we're working with employers, we need to have that contact at the company that's taking all these great materials and information and actually getting it out to the employees that we may not have direct contact with. So one of kind of my favorite parts about Commuter Choice Awards is honoring those folks that are going above and beyond in something that's probably just another thing on their to-do list. Get it? So we're about 3 months into our process, 2 months into our process this year. It starts out with nomination being open from January 8th, and then we closed them last Wednesday on March 7th. We received 18 nominations across those 6 categories. And we just sent those nominations, organized them, and sent them to our panel of volunteer judges. And thank you to some of you who have been judges in the past. We really appreciate it. And then those judges, they score each nomination within a category on effort, outcomes, creativity, and clarity of the nomination. And the highest score wins. Judges also have the option of recommending nominations for honorable mention, which really means that a nominee didn't necessarily get the highest score, but they showed a lot of promise, or there was really something exceptional about it. And so the judge has that option to recommend, hey, can we give them some special recognition? And then it goes back to the rest of the judges for that honorable mention. And then finally, we celebrate all those nominees, the honorable mentions, and the winners at our annual event. I wanted to share just in the past couple of years, we've really tried to expand our pool of nominees. And part of that is by creating some new resources for folks that maybe find applying for a nomination a little daunting. So we've really expanded our website on the metrotransit.org, the Commuter Choice website, with really clear category descriptions, giving examples of recent winners so people understand what kind of organizations are applying and what they're getting nominated for. We added an FAQ, frequently asked questions. And then we also added a video this year that gives people, again, a really clear understanding of what the awards require. For those of you who haven't been able to come in the last few years, don't worry, I haven't been keeping attendance, but you know who you are. Some recent winners we've had in the employer category, Augsburg College won last year, and they're kind of what I would consider one of our success stories. Their CFO and VP of Student Affairs came to the event in 2016. And apparently, unbeknownst to me, at the end of that event, the CFO, Beth, said, we're going to win this. And that, coupled with a construction project, really gave them the incentive to go above and beyond. They changed some of the flexibility to their parking and transportation and transit options. They instituted this transit ambassador transit champion program where they're training, sort of a train the trainer for staff to teach other staff how to use Nice Ride and transit and all the other options on campus. And I think the most visible sign of their success is that there was a 76% increase in their MetroPass participation rate over the course of a year. And I will say that's pretty unheard of. And then the second winner I wanted to highlight there is Brian Nelson from Best Buy. Brian actually started as a retail associate in a Best Buy store. He got hired in human resources at HQ, and he really has felt passionate about expanding commuter benefits to the retail associates. So he helped roll out an expanded commuter benefits program within HQ, but then expanded it to the retail associates, first in Twin Cities, and now they're rolling it out to some other metropolitan areas. And again, those are the folks that we can't do that work you know, as an outsider, but to have somebody in a company that's willing to do that is really helpful. This year, we're going to have 2 special recognitions as part of our program. First, I know you all had it on your calendar. It is 20 years of MetroPass. Don't worry, we are doing something. We're going to be recognizing our first MetroPass company, which was Ameriprise Financial. It's kind of amazing to think that it's been 20 years that we've been able to provide that service to employers. And then we'll also be recognizing Tim Kirchhoff. If those of you who know him from Anoka Transit, he's been a really reliable judge and participant in the Commuter Choice Awards for the last 20 some odd years as well. So our department particularly wanted to take an opportunity to thank him. Again, it's really helpful to have partners across the region helping us get these programs on the street. I hope you will join us. It's Thursday, April 26th at 514 Studios Event Center. It's in the North Loop. It's about a block from Haywood. 11 to 1. There is some delicious appetizers that fall right within that government range of allowable food items and no booze. But it is a really nice event to just get to see people that we work with that aren't doing the really big projects, but they're doing the little things that help our big projects succeed. So thank you again, and I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Elkins.
No question, is just a comment. I haven't been able to come the last couple of years, but I've got it penciled in on my calendar. It's open so far, but you guys have seen me carry this everywhere. This was swag from about 15 years ago, the year that Bloomington won a Commuter Choice Award for working with commuter services to Melissa Madison and her staff to put in a traffic demand management ordinance in the city. So I once lost it for about 4 months. I had left it behind in a function at Devani's in Bloomington. I went back 4 months later and they still had it behind the counter. So it would have been like losing a piece of my heart.
Councilmember Latassa.
Thank you, Chair. I've been able to go the last couple of years, and I would commend it to people. But last year was fun because they had the guy who's on our ads holding the corn dog for the state fair. Yeah. He was the keynote. And he also plays the super fan at the Saints game. So I got a selfie with him, and that was lifted me in esteem to my children.
Are there any other comments or questions? I was able to attend last year. It was fun to be in a room that were full of people that were so excited about transit. I highly recommend it if you can make time in your schedule. If not, thank you. Appreciate it. Our last item is Nick Yule is here to present on the fare policy update and next steps.
Stuff we all get.
Last but not least, right?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Once again, my name is Nick Yule, and I'm the Senior Manager of Revenue Operations at Metro Transit. And I'm happy to be here today to provide what I believe will be a quick update on the continuing fare policy work that Metro Transit and the Council have been working on as a result of some of the things that came out of our fare adjustment conversations of 2017. So as you recall from those conversations, the Council is interested in taking a proactive approach to really identifying some best practices and new approaches to fare policy that maybe some of our peers across the country are putting into place and advocating. And specifically, some of the items that were identified for continued conversation included how are peer agencies setting and balancing fare policy goals, including across all of their modes, not just bus, as we talked about previously, that Metro Transit has identified, but really all of their transportation modes. And how are they reacting when those fare recovery goals fall below or when the fare recovery levels fall below the established goals? How are peer agencies scheduling fare adjustments? Are there agencies who have successfully implemented a structured program of fare increases that perhaps results in adjustments on a more regular timeline, perhaps matched up against, say, like a consumer price index or something of that sort? And if there are agencies that have done that, what have the results been? How are agencies considering equity in the decisions they are making regarding fare adjustments, hoping to help mitigate the impacts on those most transit-dependent customers? And then what direction have agencies taken regarding reverse commute and distance-based fares to encourage ridership, but also reflect the potential costs of longer commute distances? And finally, have there been any fare adjustment simplifications among our peers where they've tried to make their fare payment system easier to understand for customers? And if so, what have the results been? One of the items that we discussed back in December that Metro Transit and the council will implement later this year is to provide at least an annual update on how Metro Transit and the council are performing in regards to fare recovery. And the plan is to include that in the discussion about budgets that take place each year with the council. And so we're hoping to kick that off later this year. This is something that will be shared annually. That will really provide for ongoing conversation about the fare recovery levels that we've achieved, which is, I think, as we can all agree, an important metric. But then we can also have an opportunity to talk about where that recovery, that fare recovery level, where those numbers are and what may be impacting them one way or another. So we recently invited 6 well-regarded agencies to submit proposals for the continued fare policy work I spoke of a couple slides ago. And we ended up with responses from 2 agencies that have extensive experience working with transit agencies, specifically in the areas of fare policy. I'm not sure if I can tell you who those 2 agencies are, so I won't at this point just to be safe, but I can tell you that they are agencies that you're probably well aware of. These agencies have worked with Metro Transit in the past, and they've also worked with numerous other peer agencies and can leverage their experience from those projects to help us with ours. They will be reaching out to other peers as well. We'll have an opportunity to work with the agency we've selected to identify not only those peers that they worked with, but some peers that are important to us for them to go out and do a lot of the research that we've talked about to really help us understand what's going on in the field of fare policy. Once the vendor has been selected, which will hopefully be this week, I expect it's going to be about 8 to 10 weeks for them to go through and to gather their information and to provide a final report for us. At that point, we'll review the results with the council to determine what next steps may be. And so as part of this process, we'll also discuss how to best bring any ideas forward to the public forum to get the public's input. I understand that MTS is looking to get some public feedback on a TNC pilot project with Metro Mobility that could occur either late this year or early next year. So this might be an opportunity for us to combine that public input so that we can really, engage the public on a number of topics that are occurring within the transit sphere. And so once that's completed, we'll then bring those final ideas back to the council for consideration. The goal is to get this done as quickly as possible, hopefully by midsummer at the latest. But we also certainly want to allow enough time for conversations with the numerous stakeholders that we have that are going to be important in this project, including our regional providers, the EAC, our riders, and of course the public, and then obviously the Transportation Committee and the full council as well. So that is my very brief update on some things that are going to be happening with fare policy here over the next few months. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Madam Chair, Nick, could you go back and just touch on the TAP program, how that fits in there as well?
Yeah, Madam Chair, council members, Mary Capstrant was here a couple weeks ago to give a brief update on TAP, to talk about some of the successes we've had, as well as lay out some of the plans that we'll be working on here over the next few months. We do have a date circled in June where Mary and I will be coming back to the council to really talk about how we've, what the success we've had, hopefully over the next 4 months in accomplishing some more of those goals, really trying to get that outreach out there and grow not just the number of folks that are riding with us under the TAP program, but also the number of agencies that are partnering with us to either deliver those cards to their customers or to act as open sites where any customer that could qualify or would qualify based off the numerous qualifications we have could go and get a card. And so in June, we'll be bringing those results back, as well as bringing some information back on some potential ways to expand that program if the council would like to consider expansion of the program to hopefully continue to grow the number of riders and to provide even more opportunities for folks to benefit from the TAP program.
Very good. Are there any questions from council members?
Just, I passed this out, and we've been talking about wanting to simplify the fares, okay? And this example, I'm going to visit my daughter in Atlanta this weekend, flying on Southwest, and this is how I picked my fare. And it reminds me, if I could go back to like 1979 when I was a young pricing manager at Continental Airlines, proposed and we tried an experiment where we had changed the pricing on all of our flights to and from Las Vegas, which has had awful peaking problems. So everybody went into Las Vegas on Thursday and Friday and came back on Sunday. So I made the fares different, 3 tiers, and it was more expensive to fly in on Thursday and Friday and out on Sunday. And it was also the very first fare ever that you had to buy your ticket at the same time you made your reservation to cut down on the no-shows. So travel agents hated it, but the occupancy rates went from like 60% to 80%. No-show rates went down, and the route became profitable for the first time ever. And so now, it reminds us, because now we take complication that is far more complicated than what I was doing 40 years ago, and have rendered it simple by improvements in the information technology. With the technology that you see that airlines display now, that kind of complexity is not a big deal. I was able to home in on exactly which fares and flights I wanted and book the trip. And I think that we need to be thinking ahead to needing that kind of flexibility, because the economics of the business is going to change completely over the next 20 years. And the cost of congestion and capacity is going to go from a small consideration to the main consideration as the factors of our cost factors change. And as we're competing with transportation network companies that basically are doing dynamic pricing on the fly, the same way MnDOT does with MnPass, we're going to have the similar kind of flexibility, or we're going to be at a huge competitive disadvantage. And so I hope we're looking ahead to not just thinking about how to make things simpler, but how to make the complexity that we're going to have to deal with easier to navigate for our customers.
Thank you. I'm glad you're not suggesting that our fare should be $207.
I'm just saying that when we're all 20
On
years
March
from now, when we look
13th.
back, our pricing is probably going to be comparably complex, but people won't think a big deal of it because the technology will have evolved to adapt to it.
Yes, Councilmember Dorfman.
But if that happens, then do I have like a chart 20 years from now and I'm not going to be working? So
You'll
let's
probably
pretend I am.
be doing it real time on your phone, the way you do with what Uber does with surge pricing right now.
But I might go, transportation's high today. I'm not going to work.
You could work from home. Yeah.
That's right.
See, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I think we're way ahead of these guys, because I don't see any TAP program here at South And in all seriousness, I was in Cancun over holiday, last Christmas holiday, and I purchased a meal in the airport for. It was just a simple meal for $16, and first thing I thought to myself, look, they're gouging me. But what about the person that actually lives in Cancun and makes such meager wages? How do they afford it? And the reality is people in poverty don't have an opportunity to travel or see loved ones, or if there's a funeral. But and I think we're doing great with our TAP program. I think it's awesome, and it provides opportunity. So
Thank you. Councilmember Lutovsky.
Thank you. I wanted to raise a question about the TAP program, because I think one of the things that would be really good to know is, are the people who are using it, are they filling capacity that would be empty otherwise, or are they taking capacity and making it more expensive to run the routes? And I don't know if there's any way that we can understand that, or if we could add that to this the work that the consultant is going to do to gather information from some of the other agencies.
Well, actually, I think we did have that on that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Council Member Lutovsky, Mayor Capstern was here a couple weeks ago, and I don't remember the exact stat, but I think it's some 60 to 70% of the TAP rides are taken during the off-peak hours, and the remaining are taken during the peak hours. But I believe that more than 90% of the rides are also happening on the local fare set. So we are, as much as that evidence suggests that they're taking up capacity that's available on the buses and the trains, which we know we have the most capacity during the off-peak hours, TAP is accomplishing that. Most of those rides are taking place when we do have that capacity.
Are there any other questions? I have actually a question to follow up on Councilmember Elkin's idea. I'm curious if you could, through our online program, have some kind of pop-up that says, you know, are your times flexible, which is similar to these airline bookings, and if to see if that you know, and then say if you travel off peak, it's lower, et cetera, and then track if people change their, you know, their purchase of the ticket. It would be interesting. I don't know. I have no idea if we're able to do that or not. I'm sure the pop-up would be easy enough, but to see if they would change what time they were buying their ticket.
Madam Chair, yeah, the pop-up should be relatively easy to incorporate some message when somebody were to select that ticket. As far as the tracking of what the results are, I believe we have the opportunity to track a phone as an account through a system, and so in theory we could implement that pop-up and then see what the results would be if there is any shift in riding patterns amongst those that use the app on a regular basis. So I'll bring that up with the project manager of the app and see what's possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Dorfman.
I have a question that just came to me. So if we ever done a comparison in terms, and I know there's lots of national data on this, but I mean, if we did something local and we looked at 5 or so commuters that routinely use our system to and from work, and we compared that to if they were driving their car, and I know there's lots of data on this, but I wonder if we have anything local, the difference their annual transportation costs would be over the course of, over a year. Do we know that? I mean, because that's a message. I know we know it. I'm not sure we tell people enough that if they took the bus 5 days a week or a light rail 5 days a week versus parking, gas, maintenance on the car.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Dorfman, you're right. It's been about 10 years since we really promoted that, and remember back in 2008 where gas prices were spiking at $4 per gallon, and we had just a continuous tracker out there that put insurance, put car parking, all that kind of stuff together, and showing a great differential. But we can certainly put another kind of a promotional effort to reinforce that. The other side of the equation is what potential role transit plays in terms of helping congestion. To the extent we're talking about creating disincentives for people to use transit by pricing during the rush hours, we should also think about the incentives by using transit and what that does during rush hour to total manage the system. And by that I mean using incentives and that would certainly allow people to compare their travel time as well as their overall costs if I were going to take this 7:30 a.m. trip by transit or by, and so what our larger role is should be something that the council takes into consideration when you're looking at pricing strategy as well.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? If not, we could be adjourned.